There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioner's future. This is just one of them. Hey, it is Wednesday evening and I am Dave Coplin and welcome to yet another Rise of the Humans live stream. Episode 5, can you believe it? Now look, I don't know if you've ever seen the Lego movie, but I have. You don't need to have kids, you can watch the Lego movie with or without kids, it's okay. There's this scene several times in the movie where the protagonist is riding a vehicle and whilst they're driving the vehicle, they are reassembling the vehicle in mid-flight. That's kind of like this live stream. We get a little bit better every week. So thank you again for joining us. How has your week been? Did you have a relatively bittersweet bank holiday, which I find sort of bank holidays under lockdown are always a little bit weird? Did you spend the week like I did, thinking about whether you could create compassion compliance training? I felt after last week's conversation there's some money to be made in compassion, I thought. I'm joking, honestly. So this week we have got a fantastic show for you. We have got a couple of brilliant guests talking about a really fascinating and important topic that's very dear to my heart. We're joined this week by the fabulous Gary Burt. Gary, how are you doing?
Hello.
How's your week been?
It's been good. Good to see the sun. Of course, being home based, I don't ever get to see it other than through a window, but I believe it's nice outside.
Yeah, I'm told that it is nice outside. We'll have to take other people's words for it. We are also joined by the fabulous Richie Prynne. Richie Prynne from the CC Smugglers. What an honour it is to have you with us this evening. How are you doing, Rich?
Good evening. Very glad to be on here.
And a good week, Rich?
Oh, yeah. Same as the last few weeks.
It's all a blur.
Yeah. Just kind of trotting along, doing my own little thing, really.
Good man. So, look, I want to get into the conversation with Gary and Rich about it's about the future of the music industry. But before we do, you know that I do like a bit of news. So I thought we'd start there. We start in a couple of places. The first with this fabulous cartoon, actually that Gary sent me earlier in the week about the new normal. And I'm sensing some pushback to the phrase new normal. Gary, do you think we're done? Is it time to retire the phrase?
It's just going to be normal, isn't it? Can you have the new normal?
How long is the normal new? That's what we need to figure out.
It's as long as headline writers will write stuff, it's going to be there. It's going to be there for a bit, yeah.
I do still like the concept of the post-pandemic new normal. I think there's some dystopian, so I just grabs you that one. So that was news number one. News number two was a story that actually those that know me will know that I'm fascinated by. These small hub motors, electric hub motors that allow you to create all sorts of vehicles. It might be a skateboard, it might be a scooter, it might even bizarrely be some autonomous luggage. More on that later. And one of the unexpected outcomes of coronavirus has been that the UK government, long treating any of these vehicles as illegal, is now considering fast-tracking trials, because guess what? Turns out they're actually quite good for getting people around urban areas. And so here's a Guardian article talking about that being fast-tracked. So well known for that conversation. To my surprise, I got this most amazing message on Facebook from Ken. This is Lady Florence Norman, a suffragette, going to work in 1916. How fantastic is that? So there's already precedent, is what I'm saying, for this, right? We should be traveling to work on that. Now, Richie, I know you like a motorcycle just like me. Could you see yourself sort of traversing the streets of Bedford on one of these?
I mean, I could see myself doing anything, really. I'd prefer it if it was off-road.
For the right price,
then if
Rich.
it was off-road, I'd like to have some petrol in it as well, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And there are actually, interestingly, there are going to be some off-road versions of these. It's going to be good. So look, that being said, let me come back to the stage for this conversation I want to have today is about the music industry, is not just about coronavirus, but is in fact about an industry that in a sense was already on its last legs. And I know that's controversial. It's been on its last legs since iTunes first arrived. But one of the reasons Richie and I started working together a long time ago was that digital was supposed to be the great savior of things like the music industry. It was supposed to be able to connect fans to creators, to artists, and enable that transaction to work. So the artists create content that the fans love and the fans pay for. The artists get paid so they can go on to make more great content. That was supposed to be the point, but actually things haven't played out quite that way. Let me play you a little snapshot of Richie's story.
Standing on the street, standing on the street, where we gonna be, yeah, standing on the street, said, hey!
For years, the CC Smugglers worked their socks off, standing on the street, cold and hungry, building a loyal fan base. They called it guerrilla busking. Touring the country in the back of a van.
It's got to be here somewhere, surely.
Playing to crowds queuing up to get into someone else's gig. People like blues legend C6 Steve, who actually came out to watch them. That 5-year slog on the streets paid off and they started playing bigger venues and festivals. Glastonbury, Latitude in Suffolk, Cambridge Folk Festival, and big stages across Europe. Rock and rolling, but sadly not in it.
We probably had toured over a dozen countries. We'd supported Bruce Springsteen, we'd hung out with royalty, played at the Savoy. On the outside, things were absolutely flying, man. It was, and even now, I look back at it and I think that's what I was dreaming for, and we got there.
Are you ready?
That's when I'm alive. In front of big crowds like that, so when I'm alive.
Last year, they used the crowdfunding site PledgeMusic to bring out a record. Put simply, their fans pledge money, then when the record is made, the band get paid. But that didn't happen. PledgeMusic collapsed, wound up in the High Court with debts of £7.5 million.
The fact is, the company disbanded about 3 weeks before we were about to send all these albums out. And so they took £20,000 of our fans' money and left us. We'd already put £20,000 in out of my dad's pension because he believed in what we were doing. And yeah, I mean, it was a total tragedy, really.
Do you know, every week there's one thing, and that was it. I had a little sneeze in the middle of that clip. I know. See, but it shows that we're human. Anyway, so I just...
does show you human.
I did a really sensitive, compassionate, see what I'm doing there, Richard Tyler, segue, which was, you know, and actually, truthfully, every time I see that clip, there is a little piece of me that cries. And it's for two reasons. One, because I just, you know, when you see the talent that you, Rich, and the rest of the band have got, it sort of doesn't deserve to be treated in that way. You know, when in a world where Gary and I can get paid for the skills that we have, it doesn't seem fair that we find so hard for artists like you. And then second, digital was supposed to be the answer to this. It was supposed to be the thing that would, you know, cut out the middleman. And is this really just a case of just one bad actor? Is it all about Pledge? Or do you think the problem with the industry and digital is really deeper than that?
Well, you have to think... I got my first instrument about 20 years ago, which was on the crest of kind of LimeWire and Napster. That was when that was, and I started this band when Facebook was really, about 2009, Facebook was really hitting the mainstream, Spotify. So really my career has paralleled a digital revolution, particularly for the music industry. And when I was growing up, I felt like a child of the revolution. It felt like something amazing was happening, and it was going to be this wonderful thing where they were taking music from the big companies and handing it out for free. And I would probably never have played such varied world music if it wasn't for the fact that I could access it all for free. But like any sort of well-meaning socialist revolution, I feel like maybe it did turn a bit sour, and actually it's kind of the poor people on the bottom are now struggling, and actually the musicians, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? But it's basically when I was just coming through it, the whole point was that we had to adapt and innovate. And I could see these older guys in the industry who'd already been in it 10, 20 years moaning and saying, oh, this is out of order. We used to get this much money for our record sales. Now we get nothing. And as a young sort of hopeful, I remember thinking, oh, you're old dinosaurs. The world changes. You've just got to innovate and adapt. And now 10 years on, and I've been chewed up and spat out. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm resisting it. And I'm thinking, well, actually, when I've thought about it today, I think, is this just the nature of things? And is it just humans' job to innovate and keep up with evolution?
Gary, in the sense of the sort of the industry and how that's evolved, do you think we've reached another point where we need, is it time for another iTunes? And I don't mean another platform, but another revolution in how we think about consumer pay for all of this?
I really hope so. And I'm on the opposite side because utterly talentless in terms of musical instruments. But I think a couple of things. One, we're in this ironic twist, aren't we? Because these tools that were supposed to empower individuals have actually disempowered them. So, if we look at a lot of the funding sites, we've seen the funding percentages go up. And obviously, we've seen some of them go bust. We look at iTunes, we look at Spotify, and actually, all the artists' input into Spotify, the amount they're getting from it is absolutely tiny. It's not a sustainable solution. It's what's happened is tech has done what tech does best, which is serve itself. It's really sad. I think what we need to see is an evolution of where we are. If the worst thing is you said as a socialist thing, Richie. I think you're right, but actually what we've got is the worst of capitalism. Because we've had something that's come in, taken over, and absolutely crushed the underlying ecosystem underneath it. But it will evolve. It will come out of this. Because I can listen to music on Spotify. I can buy a CD. Even my kids think I'm old if I talk about one of those. But what I care about is that real music. And, that will come back. Because it's that feeling of going and being with others, which is going to triumph here. It isn't the streaming platform. Yeah, Spotify is going to continue to make money. It's continued to stream. That's not where it's going to go. I think what we're going to see is that resurgence back to, human values. So it is going to come back.
Do you think the consumer is getting smarter? I mean, Rich, think about your audience. Are they, you always had a really rich conversation with them, I felt, in terms of how you managed that audience and you spoke with them. Do they get a sense of evolution? Do they get, they realize that it needs to be paid for at some point, and actually if it doesn't get paid for, what happens that there isn't any more content? Do you think they're evolving in?
I do, yeah. I think that the at the point where I was championing innovation, I think that was part of the innovation, that we had to make sure we had a relationship with the fans, and actually we brought it down to an authenticity. So we were playing real music, like you saw in that clip. We were standing on the street corners with acoustic instruments, and we've always had a human relationship with our fans, and that's what's underpinned that whole 10 years, despite the fact that streaming, that was what we built our success on. And I think that humanistic element will always underpin artistry, and that's the basic building blocks that we have to concentrate on.
And that's quite interesting, Rich, because I was, without wanting to go into a world of pain, of marketing, but isn't that just about being authentic? As you know, if you were a brand, and you know what I mean, it's just authenticity that matters, isn't it? That regardless of the platform.
Yeah, authentic, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we are all eventually just humans, and people just want to believe in something.
And so let's sort of flip a little bit into the current situation, and you know, the numbers are pretty dire, right? So artists like you've got nowhere to play, you've got no festival season, you can't go to the studio, all that sort of stuff. But equally, the venues, the independent venues in particular, that are dotted across the country and you know, are, you know, a part of our social infrastructure, are equally challenged. Do you think the skills that were important as a musician, alongside your sort of musicianship, but things like being able to sell the band, being able to, you know, market the band, doing things like getting the social, that whole thing, are those skills important now in lockdown for bands and venues to maintain that relationship with their audience?
Oh, I mean, it's just another giant leap. I personally am seeing it, and you've got to remember that actually, as a musician, I'm now taking the first year out that I've taken for a decade. So I'm looking at it as an outside observer. But it's not just musicians, like you say, music venues as well. But even as such things like the martial arts gym that I was going to, I'm watching these guys, and everyone in society is being herded onto an online space, and it's like, right, emergency, work out how to get your business online, and people are learning by trial of fire how to relate to people. And I'm even seeing people, I'm watching it develop now. So I'm seeing there's the gym that I've been going to, I seen him, and at the beginning he was shooting out emails, and then I think he must have seen his sort of engagement dropping because people don't want constant emails. So everyone is kind of having to learn on the flip. And is that inevitable? Is that just a part of the inevitable evolution? I think probably, and I think this is just something that's sort of fast forwarded it. But it also, because it's rushed, it's going to present other human problems that we kind of got to be aware of. And really what it's doing is crowbarring everyone onto these social platforms. Are just these spaces where people exist, where they're designed to be addictive consumer traps. And I worry about, because I feel like I'm just a step back from it, watching it happen. And I worry about the psychology that it's going to do, because even when I was in it, the need for the validation of likes, oh, this post's only got 150 likes, and it's the psychology of it worries me. And even though I think it's inevitable and it's really important to use it, I think we're in a funny old time, really interesting time.
I mean, I'm fascinated by that, Rich, and it's actually something that we've not spoken a lot about in the past, but there's this sort of parallel between being a performer and look, let's not beat around the bush. I know you are like this, I'm certainly like this. I miss getting out in front of an audience and doing my thing. And I see a lot of musicians using social platforms as a way of, you know, that's their sort of, it's the only way they can get that high is by doing it that way. But the flip of that is then I wonder if people are then, you know, doing that, getting the high, then looking back, well, actually, why didn't that live stream get as many views, or what are we doing there? Do you think there's this sort of, I don't know what it is, you know, conflict between the joy and the desire to perform versus this sort of slightly self-centered, how well did that do? What was the engagement like?
Totally. And you know what's different about when you're on stage, it's the ultimate reckoner, because when you're on stage, if they don't cheer or clap, you're doing something wrong, and you've got to change what you're doing. On a social media platform, I don't know how far we go before I put my tinfoil hat on, but I don't think this is too far to say that on a social platform, it's not just about was what you did good enough or engaging enough, because there are other forces at work, and it's ultimately a consumer trap. They want to get you to pay more money, or to whatever it is. It's all about bleeding money out of people, and in that way you're at the mercy of it. So yeah, it's dangerous, and it fools you into thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, I have to do this better, whereas actually it's just you're falling into a trap.
Yeah. Can I just ask, Rich, when was the last time you went on stage and didn't switch your microphone on?
Dave, if we wanted to sit and talk about the things I've done wrong on stage, I will be able to tell you a lot of stories.
So you made a really good point there, and I had a punchline that I had to get out. So, but
I'll tell you, I will add to that though, Dave. There was not many times where I've messed up on stage where I would say the audience haven't just liked me even a little bit more, because they do like someone real.
Well, it's back to authenticity, isn't it? And it's funny. So going back to your point, Mitch, which I think is really well made about social media, is do you think we're at the point where you're better off not dancing with that devil at all, or is it about going in with your eyes open and saying, look, I'm going to do this? But it's a bit like Nick, who's often on the show, had this one of the best things he taught me, and he taught me lots of great things when we were doing lots of PR stuff, is like, Dave, never ever read the bottom half of the internet. And the point is, you just don't read the comments, except if they're great comments. Of course, I'll read them if you're out there and you feel like making a comment. And I think there's an element of this is if you become a slave to those likes, if you become a slave to how many viewers you've got, you're kind of missing the point of what you're doing if you want to retain that authenticity. And I wonder, there's another analogy that's just occurred to me, Rich. It's a bit like, that point that I think you've been at, and I think other bands have been at, where you've got this choice. Do I play the music that's genuine and authentic to me, or do I start to bend and weave to play something that I think the radio will like or the record companies will like? And I wonder if that's the same sort of situation here with social. Is, do I stay unauthentic and do what I do irrespective of how many likes I get, or do I start playing for it? Do I start using tools to make sure I'm tweeting at the right time? Do you think that's a similar thing, Rich, or no?
It's absolutely the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. And I'm in a position now for the first time in my life where I can take a breather and actually realize that. And it's sort of refreshing, but then it's not really what I wanted, because my career's had to crumble for me to see it. But it's ultimately the most important thing. And this year's seen me lose a couple of really close friends as well, who've sadly sort of died really quite without any warning. And it makes you think, I mean, and I know we're here to talk about tech, but really the main thing the main thing I've brought from this year is that you don't know when it's a short life. So happiness day to day is the most important thing. And actually social media, it's not the devil. It's not, I built that whole 10 years of absolute amazing adventure using social media, but I've also seen it really crush people as well. So you just take your day to day, I think, is be mindful.
Yeah, it's about that balance. And I mean, Gary, you must be seeing this in the things that you're doing around getting the right balance and perspective of what social can do in building and engaging with an audience. Yeah,
I really echoed. I just want to rewind to something about social media and technology in general. I don't think we've ever said this before, Dave, but when we first met, it was actually we're in a big room. It was a work thing. We're both around a table, and we listened to a guy talk about the future of education. And I remember you and I looked at each other, and he was talking about how tech is going to change it. Tech is going to revolutionize everything. I remember the conversation was, well, what I care about is my kid being happy at school and having a great teacher and a really good classroom. And we're missing something with tech. Tech should be there to empower and make better, never replace a human value. As soon as it starts to replace it, we've missed the point. And you'll always find the motivation behind that is money. And we're not saying that, it's not, tech isn't bad. What's bad is removing the human or seeking to overly monetize that. And it's the same with, with Twitter. We're old, grey, wise, and you've got lots of hair, Richie, so you're okay. But, we've seen this, and we can be a bit distant. But when we start to see teenagers having their self-worth defined by, it's not even by people, we know it's not people, it's bots, it's by trolls, it's by Actually a lot of manipulation engines who are coming and commenting on that. When we're seeing people's real emotions being impacted by those platforms, that's when we should start be taking a step back. A couple of things that you mentioned, particularly around the physical. I was just scribbling down. It's like the new physical, the new normal. I think what's going to happen is the value of authentic is going to come through. The big difference, if you're going, Gary, what's going to be different about the future, about the new normal? It's going to be a premium based on smaller audiences. So the idea of going to a big venue, no, I can have a great experience in my room. That's not the feeling. What we're going to see is, I think, a differential whereby I think the skills that Richie has, the band, they're going to be in value. What's going to happen is you're not going to have a bigger audience. You're going to have a smaller audience that are really going to value being a part of that exclusive group. So rather than play to bigger and bigger groups, I think there's a real future in the smaller places coming online. And what the venues have to do is not fill the venue. They need to fill the venue and make it findable. They need to make it visible to the people who really want to be there, the people who really want to be a part of that audience and have a very special evening. And that's going to have a premium. So what's going to be the big shift? I think it will flip back. Those human values are going to be the ones that are going to be monetizable. But there's going to be a bigger differential on that, because what's going to happen is when your material is online and it can be streamed, you're making no money. But actually, what value am I getting out of that as a viewer? Am I part of that? I think I'm going to be paying for authenticity.
I'm sure we've got some Americans listening. They won't pull you up on that.
So what am I going to be doing? Am I going to be going to 10, 20,000 seater stadiums? No. I'm going to be looking for 200, 300, 400 people gigs that are close, that are authentic. That's where the money will be. And I think that if you wanted to do something, yes, you've got the online broadcast medium and social media. Don't get caught. It is. You know what social media is? It's about advertising. We know that. But I think or being authentic is going to come through, because it's the human value that people are going to want to do. Don't get me wrong, social media is really going to push back on this. They're not going to be happy when people start pulling back and going, no, I'm going to switch off my phone. Look at the stuff in the States we've started to see. You go in and it's a no phone area. The concert cannot be filmed. You get filmed, you're going to get sued. We've seen gigs in America where if you get caught filming, you can be sued for up to $1 million, because it's about being authentic and in the room. This is going to rebound.
I like that, actually, in the sense that I think people will emerge from this experience desperate to be at a festival or desperate to be at a concert, and hopefully not to sit and from 4 inches behind a glowing rectangle and enjoy the concert, but to actually be at the bloody concert. And also to not talk through it. I mean, I think there's a key part of that. The pushback I would give both of you, though, not that you've really said this, but I think some people are using social really, really well in this period and engaging with a really genuine way with their audiences, and I've seen, there's a number of examples I'll give you there. So there's, here in the UK, there's Submarine Cat Music, fantastic weekly show, goes out 8:00 on a Tuesday. I'll put the link in the comments. There's an amazing Canadian musician, guy called Ron Hawkins out of Toronto. I said Toronto there, Maggie's going to kill me. Toronto is the place. He's been doing Tommy Douglas Tuesdays on every Tuesday night, which is Eastern Standard Time at 8 p.m. And even, here in the UK, Swill from The Men They Couldn't Hang, Sunday night, 7 p.m. And the thing about each one of those shows, and they're all coming from different angles, but they're there to engage with the audience. So the audience dialogue is a core part of it. So, they're talking with fans, they're playing music for fans. And that to me was the beautiful part of what digital was supposed to bring. The challenge, that's not suspended. Clearly they're not getting paid for that. And they're doing it on platforms where they don't even get ad funded. but hopefully it's the long tail. I hope, just like we'll remember the brands that looked after us in the lockdown, hopefully we'll remember the artists who, lived through no income, but still went out there every week performing and trying to engage with their fans. That's certainly my perspective. And, so let me throw that over to you. My question is twofold. One, do you think that's right and you see other people do? And if you do, have you got any other examples, other good live streams that we should be watching while the lockdown continues? Let me start with you, Gary.
So yeah, but from what you've just said, though, everything you've said is saying authentic, authentic, authentic. So it's if you're going with the right reasons, if you're going online to keep your audience alive, keep active, keep an active audience, keep that connection, to play for your fans, that comes through. If you're faking it, it doesn't matter whether you're online. You're going to be invisible. You want to have 1 million streams. Nobody cares. If you're authentic, it will come through. I mean, I think, if you want to see authentic, sometimes it takes a while, but it'll come through. C6 Steve is probably a great example of that. Yeah. I mean, in terms of theatre, in terms of that connection, one of the things I've seen is the theatre online, the Barn Theatre, small theatre, putting on lots of online events, leveraging the skills. They've got a physical space, they can stream, they've got audio and sound guys. They're putting on lots of different events and trying to keep going through this period as a community theatre. They can't have people there, but they're trying to keep that connection going. But I think, if I pass it back to you, Dave, you're seeing these live streams. Do you pay premium when they come near you? Would you travel perhaps further to really go and see that? Because that they're going to throw a lot of effort into those live shows.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I'm massively biased in how I answer that, because for me, if I'm going to bother to go and see anybody, it's because I'm going to go and enjoy that experience. And I'm not just saying that because he's on the bloody call, but if you ever saw Richie and the CC Smugglers, yes, the music's brilliant, but it was the performance is what you go for. That was, and I would stand at the back and I would just watch it wash over me and the rest of the crowd. And I would drive a long way and pay money, good money, for that every single time. But then that's me. So it's kind of a little bit biased in how I answer that. Rich, let me bring it back to you. And we're at time as well. So I'm going to sort of just bring some summary questions to you. One, I'd love to hear if you've come across anything that you've thought was really good. Secondly, if you had some messages for the people out there who are trying to maintain their audience, you've got this lovely in inverted commas, because I know you've been through a lot to get there, but you've got this perspective of being able to take a step back. What advice would you give to people who are trying to engage, not just with their audience, but trying to rebuild some semblance of a sort of musical career? I think that would be great if you could, those two things, Rich.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what's already been said is pretty much spot on, really. But just take it easy and just be real. Don't do it because you feel like you need to do it, which is something that is hard to do. You think, I need to do another video, because that's the first thing that will kill your artistry. Don't write a song because you need to get a song on radio or a hit. Do it if you possibly can. Just cling on and do it because it means something, or do it for the sake of doing it, not because you need to, because there's pressure. Something I'm still trying and learning to do even now, but that would be the ultimate thing that I think everyone should aim for.
And have you been watching any streams? And I know you've been working hard getting ready for the next phase, but
yeah, there's one that comes to mind which sums it up perfectly, right? So there's this musician that I've known from over the festival scene, and he's a phenomenal musician called Ewan Bleach. He's predominantly a clarinet player, but he plays piano and sings as well. Really, really good guy, but has infamously never really been on social media. He's one of these old school chaps who sort of looks like he's from the 20s, plays from the 20s, and I've always got the sense has sort of bulked at being on social media. And for the first time, I'm now seeing him, someone's obviously persuaded him to get in front of a webcam, and he's doing these sessions. It's through a venue that it's called Jamboree, and they're the nights that he's playing on. But the gap in his life, this is all me assuming, but I assume the gap in his life where he was out every night playing, he's filling that, not because he thinks, oh, my social media is not getting any likes anymore, because he never had any, but it's authentically needs to play and needs to perform. And so go check out Ewan Bleach's performance through Jamboree sessions, and they are wonderful. If you like 20s, 30s, 40s jazz, which I do.
That's great. And on that, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of housekeeping. So the first bit is to say thank you so much to Gary and to you, Richie, for giving some time. I know it's busy for both of you. Gary's got a proper job. Rich, you're about to have a proper job. And I'm just sitting around here messing around, pushing buttons and occasionally not pushing the right ones, but that's okay. So thank you guys for being on the call. A couple of other things. Just we did do that great piece for the World Service last week, which went out on Friday. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, it was a really nice conversation with Rory, Kathleen Jones, about the future of work and how different organisations are thinking about remote working. We did a session, when was it? About 3 weeks ago for LogMeIn, which those sessions are now available for anybody to watch. And I would really recommend, obviously mine, but actually no, also moving from voice to digital, that's got the fabulous Tiffany St James on. So that's also worth checking out. And then I'm going to leave you finally with the webinar, or the anti-webinar, as I've been calling it. So this was working with a wonderful client called Telium, who approached me to help them with a webinar, but they said webinars are a bit rubbish. Could we do something different? Well, guess what? We are doing something different. It's on June the 4th, and it would be great if you could sign up. With that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much again for joining us. It's always great that you give us your time, whether it's now live or whether you catch us later on the replay. You know the drill. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done already. Tell your friends. Thanks for turning up, and we will see you all again next.
There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them.